Hello everyone, welcome to the Luke Branquinho Show.
I was going, I'm going to use this horse sidekick, and everyone's like, horse sidekick. Well, world champion theory wrestler Luke Branquinho uses it, and everyone goes, oh, does he? and then you kind of legitimized it.
This dog, for a celebrity, was adamant that what they were saying was wrong with it wasn't wrong with it, and actually the dog was right.
I'm a small fish, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? Tell Kevin Costner, hey, Amberley Snyder can't show up to film her scene.
If you subscribe, who knows, maybe I'll do the booty shake. All right, my guest now, we're gonna have Matthew Rhys. Matthew is a good friend, an actor, but most of all is known for his tour guide skills. I had some great conversation and a great horseback ride with Matthew when we first met in the hills of LA. Matthew, I don't know if you remember that. I wanna know how a Welshman knows so much about the Hollywood Hills.
As a Welshman, there's not that many of us. There's only about 3 million people. And so I've been living in Los Angeles for a long time, and I've been visiting Griffith Park in LA. For some time I wondered, I said, why does Griffith Park have a Welsh name like Griffith? Who was Griffith? And I set about researching him. And the story that unfolded as I bored you with it, with a 3-hour horse ride through the Hollywood Hills, was that this man from Wales back in kind of 1875 came to LA. I mean, the short version is like the film There Will Be Blood meets Citizen Kane. He kind of, through his own force of will, shaped Los Angeles, created such a terrible crime that LA went out of its way to eradicate him from the history books. For about 12 years now, I've been trying to get his story made into a limited television series without much success.
But if you hire me to do something, like if I could be an extra, maybe you would have some more success.
In fact, I've got the part for you. There was an assassination attempt on him by a man called Thomas Burkitt, who rode up to him on a galloping horse, fired 2 cartridges from a shotgun into Griffith's chest, and then took out his own pistol and shot himself in the head. I think you'd be perfect as Burkitt. If anyone can shoot himself in the head, fall off a horse, it's you.
Going back to your tour guide service, when we went to New York, Matthew, you took a picture of Lindsay and I and the Statue of Liberty in our background.
That was a great night.
You took us to the bar. What was the bar you took us to?
There's a very specific area in Brooklyn called Red Hook. The last kind of longshoreman's bar, it's called Sonny's. Now it's become a bit of a mecca for people who are trying to find the last dive bar. So I was like, they've become aware of who they are. Now they're selling t-shirts to idiots like me. One of the great things I do like walking around with you, because you have such an impressive cowboy hat, it disarms people in a lot of ways, and it opens up conversation immediately. They go, where are you from? Are you a real cowboy? And then they're even more blown away when you go, yes, I am a real cowboy. And then usually people like me interject going, he's a world champion! Shut up.
But no, you're exactly right. And we had conversation with a guest the other day about this, how Yellowstone 1 has kind of opened up the Western way of life again to America and really to the world. And you being in that industry, do you see that as much as we do?
Growing up in a small, very damp place, very green but very wet, to see the kind of big, wide, arid vistas of Westerns to us was so exotic, and it kind of epitomized something very strongly about America. It still does, I think, which is why people kind of immediately feel comfortable in just saying something to you, talking to you, or opening up to you. But I totally agree about Yellowstone. That's really captured something again and brought it back. And I think that's true of Westerns. Westerns seem to be on this cycle. Every X amount of years, a Western will come back and you're reminded of it again. You go, oh my God. And it's tough because it's almost like people have to reimagine it in a way, and that's what Yellowstone was. I think a reimagining, some very smart one, of the Western world.
Well, and we talked about it too, how it brings Hollywood and Western together, because as a cowboy, as a rancher, I watched the first episode, I'm like, this is great that it's bringing Western culture back, but there's a lot of bullshit on here that's not true. You know, but at the same time, it's like, man, this is good. I'm glad we're getting the Western, way of life back out to people that don't really understand it. And I think this would be a great opportunity for you to do a show about Up at 6, back to bed at 6 the next day, so you get 0 sleep, like most ranchers and farmers.
Other thing I truly would love to see is where's the real big docuseries that follows 3 families over a year, either 3 different states, and ranching is such a hard life. It's the kind of thing you'd watch and you go, I don't even know if I could do that. It's so hard.
Yeah, and they don't realize that 70, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, that's how everybody really kind of had to live to survive.
What we do is we take over 3 ranches, we bring in 3 ranching families, and then they have to live like they did in the 1880s.
Wow, no, so the kids wouldn't get any cell phones or iPads or anything like that?
What a terrible concept.
Right, none of that nonsense coming through their screen. I'm putting a lot of thought into this, and I'm gonna run it by the people that I know. In fact, I feel like we should have a show, like a video podcast, kind of like we're doing.
Now, you know what I was trying to think? You know, like when you said, like, come do this, we'll, chat about how we met and everything. Did you use a horse psychic called Jackie Weaver?
Yes, I did use a horse psychic for my horse, Spider-Man.
I think I got the number through you, and then I used her on my horses, and she kind of blew my mind. I was going, I'm going to use this horse psychic, and everyone's like, horse psychic. Well, world champion steer wrestler Luke Branquinho uses it, and everyone goes, oh, does he? and then you kind of legitimized it. And then the first thing she says is kind of, okay, you tend to ride wearing a lot of blue denim. And she's like, you got to stop that because one of them hates it. I was like, what?
Canadian tuxedo.
The old Canadian tuxedo. No wonder the horse was like, take that off.
When you first came out to the ranch and we were practicing, and I think it might have been the very first time I met you, I believe it was now my brother-in-law, Blaine. You know, we were saying, oh, Matthew's an actor, he's on this show, and brothers and sisters came up. Was it Blaine that asked you, so you're the one that makes out with the other dude?
Yeah, he did.
And the look on your face, because you're around all these cowboys in cowboy hats, and you know they're probably gonna judge you.
Of course they are. I was slightly hoping that no one would even know I was an actor, but then when I turned up at the ranch in a Prius, I was like, I think I've given the game away. Do you remember you let me get hold of a steer coming out of a chute?
Yeah.
It's one of my most embarrassing moments of my life, where the steer comes out, I'm grabbing it, you're telling me how to turn its head, all this stuff, right? And then I thought I heard his neck breaking, right? Because it was like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm breaking its neck. And you were like, no, those are his teeth grinding.
That's
right. I was like, oh, okay, good to know.
He thought I could take this guy.
Yes, and you gave me a look as if to say, I don't think you could break his neck.
What about the time, and I think you were on this helicopter.
Oh my God, yeah.
You guys land in the pasture, we go to the rodeo, and then nope, can't fly home, this thing would wreck. It could have happened at any time.
That was even more terrifying. And it's kind of things I thought I'd never say. We had a mutual friend dating a helicopter pilot. What was more funny is he just bought the helicopter off ABC News.
Right.
Couldn't take off, and then he kind of opens it up and went, ooh, this thing could have crashed any second. And we were like, what? And we were like, can we borrow a truck? And you're like, yeah, sure.
The crazy part was, you guys land, we go to the rodeo, come back, he takes, I think my mom and Jameson, or one of the boys, for a tour. Then when he lands, he's like, we need to drive home, I need to go get some parts.
Yeah, like a few blades. Yeah.
You sent me a video of you on the back of a horse at a friend of mine's ranch that I high school rodeoed with. The horse rearing up. How was that when you were shooting? Because when we were in New York talking about this, my wife Lindsay, we were talking about Matthew being Perry Mason, and she's like, I did not ask if he was in Perry Mason, I asked who he played. This is Perry Mason. So how was that the rearing up?
The backstory was that Mason's family were cattle ranchers in original LA, which I thought was a really interesting idea because it places him between these two worlds. So they said, what would you like to do? I said, well, as soon as we set him up as a rancher, let's have him on a horse. So there is a scene where this horse rears. So they very kindly sent me for training with Scott, who you rodeo with. I had to be bareback because I was like, I'll be on a saddle. And they're like, no, the whole point is that in this scene, you'll have to be bareback. I'm like, well, that's going to be infinitely harder. And they're like, yep. So in this scene, Monty, who has trained these horses to rear, said, you really only have got 2 or 3 rears out of the horse. We do 2 rears, and I thought, this is going great, this is going great. And then the director ran over to you and we got 1 more rear. Will you remember to act? And I was like, oh, yes. Sorry. I was having such a good time. I was had this huge smile. So they said the first 2 rears are no good. So I'm smiling away, going, woohoo! Fanning a cowboy hat, going, yee-hoo! Let her buck, yeah.
Oh, let her buck. That reminds me of our time in Pendleton.
Yes, the legendary Pendleton.
Yeah, Pendleton Roundup is the rodeo in middle September, and it could be a deal breaker for guys trying to make the national finals and, move on to their goal of winning a gold buckle. And we spent some time there, and we got inebriated. It seems like when I'm around you, we drink often.
It's an unfortunate habit we've fallen into.
I still have that bottle of Welsh whiskey you gave me. Lindsay and I were packing up our liquor cabinet, moving, our big move to Texas.
Well, I'll have to come to Texas.
We'll do a hunting trip like we did in Oregon. I wanted to visit about that too. I remember once we harvested the deer and got it all cut up for processing, you put it in an ice chest, and I was thinking the whole time, oh my God, he's gonna carry this on, it's gonna start leaking blood everywhere. But you made it home, and you made a delicious stew for your family.
We still talk about that stew. It was like I've never felt more kind of manly in my life, where I went out, caught dinner, cooked it, and the kids actually liked it. That's the true proof of it all.
How is the family? What a lot of people don't know, Carrie Russell, now part of your family.
They're all good. They're all great. As you were saying that, I was like, oh, I've just become the actor cliche. Never date your leading lady, etc., etc. And then, we met, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going home to the UK. I guess I'm setting up shop in New York.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I used to watch Felicity when I was in college, and I had kind of a crush on her, so.
Luke Branquinho, world champion steer wrestler, I used to watch Felicity.
And I love that a girl that I had a television crush on, obviously, is with a very good friend of mine. In our time of knowing each other, we've seen each other, 10 times in person? We can pick up right where we left off from the last time. And to me, that is the sign of a true person that you could relate with and be a friend with. And that's why I consider you that.
And also, very similar humor that we have with each other, which is usually insulting each other. It's like push button. It's always immediate. Always very happy to see you.
You're going back and forth to New York on the weekends to see the family, which is crazy life. So it's like you're rodeoing. You're not even in your own bed most of the time.
I like to think of myself as a rodeo cowboy in many ways. Least of all because I'm on the road a lot.
Stay out of the beer stand.
Yes, that's what you keep saying.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and best of luck to you with Perry Mason. And I'm so thankful my wife is as forgiving as she is for making fun of her with you about, what do you play in Perry Mason? So, sorry, Lindsay, love you. Thank you for being forgiving. Matthew loves you too.
Of course I do.
All right, well, best of luck to you. Thank you, Matthew, and we'll be talking to you.
Thanks, dude. Take care. I'll see you soon.
You bet. My next guest can speak to animals, understand what they're thinking, and can help the owners understand what their animals are feeling and going through. And I've experienced this personally with my horse Spider-Man a few years back, and I don't know, when I say a few years back, it's been a while. Jackie Weaver, thank you for joining me.
Hi, yes, it has been many years. I'd say probably at least 10.
Yeah, and I can remember Matthew Rhys and Claire Staples were out at the ranch, and we were practicing, and they brought up, you should visit with Jackie about your horse, because at that point my horse Spider-Man and I weren't really meshing. And in professional rodeo, you need to mesh with your animal to be able to succeed and win as much as you can. They gave me your number, and I tell you what, it was amazing, the information you provided to me to help my horse and I communicate better.
Oh, bless you, that's so kind. And to be honest, from a gentleman like yourself working in your type of work, it's so lovely for us communicators to think, men especially, highly skeptic, but for somebody like you to say, it absolutely helped. Gets people help with their animals, because you say it's a bond. You need trust, and especially in that type of work as well, trust is key. Even your common house cat, your common dog, to help understand them better, I think it's such a great outlet for them to use a communicator such as yourself. It absolutely does help. A lot of people, and many people, have a brilliant relationship with their animals, which is fabulous. But I always say to people that, if you actually truly understand that they do understand you, and especially say if somebody has a reading, afterwards you'll find you'll talk to your animals knowing they understand. So there's a big difference. It just adds another dimension to relationship. We get things from their perspective that sometimes we wouldn't even thought of. I love what I do. I know you probably hear this. I know I heard it, when I mentioned to people that I used a pet psychic for my horse. So much skepticism on it. Oh, that's all a bunch of BS. That doesn't work. And honestly, it helped me communicate with my other animals after Spider-Man. Now he's back up in Canada with a guy I'd gotten him from and retired, but it helped me communicate better with my other animals later on in the future. it really can make such a difference. And to be honest, I do know that Matthew was very skeptical to begin with as well. As I say, in anything in life, you know, if someone says I can turn water into wine, I'll say, okay, carry on. And if they can, I'll be very happy.
Has the process changed? And I mean, I guess with technology gotten a little bit easier for you?
Technology is very useful because obviously we can speak to people all over the world, which is very handy. But it doesn't matter if an animal's in front of me or thousands of miles away, it's all telepathy. So we're getting into their mind. And I would say that since I've spoken to you, people are much more open to this.
Some of the celebrities, obviously Matthew Rhys is a good friend of mine and recommended you, but who are some of the other names that you've had out there and, you know, people could associate with saying, well, if these people trust Jackie, why shouldn't I?
There's people like Paul McKenna, although he's British, he works with the mind and
right.
He's a very switched on man. Over this country, there's been lovely William Roach, who I think they probably know in America because he's the longest running soap star there is. And he's been amazing. And again, when I went to chat to his animals, there was 3 of them and they were all completely different, which was great fun. And again, good validation. I even managed to solve, and I always say I don't diagnose, but this dog for a celebrity was adamant that what they were saying was wrong with it wasn't wrong with it, and actually the dog was right.
Well, I know, looking on your website, I seen also a person had a deer in their garden and took a picture of it and you had it on there. I'd love to hear that story.
Gosh, that was ages ago. It wasn't her own pet deer. It would come into the garden. So, of course, logically, we're thinking, what information are we going to get that can totally prove? And one of the amazing things that came up, it said, oh, my arthritis is much improved. And I said, I don't know if you're aware it's had arthritis. She said, yes. She said, for the last 2 years, I've been feeding it some form of medicine in an apple, and it's been taking it, and you can see the change in its movement. And I thought, oh, lovely. And the relationship of understanding, the trust from the animal to her was incredible. And it would like just step away from all its friends and come to her and go back.
I know you got some pictures sent of my dogs, and we got Leroy, we got him first part of the year. I know when he's done something bad because he comes walking up to me kind of like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, but I don't even know what he did. So for him to know that he did something wrong and he's in trouble, yet I don't know what it is. He might have chewed on something, he might have peed on the floor.
I've just got myself a 10-month-old puppy. I've just rescued him, so I'm aware of that one too. We're very, very lucky. And as I say, it's kind of explaining to him what is right and what is wrong. And if they've got boundaries, they're happier with that. You can pee or poo as long as you can see the sky. It doesn't work if people have got a conservatory, but as long as you can see the sky, right. That's okay. You can't see the sky, no.
And that is so true. We got another puppy, he's Fergus. We named him Fergus. He's a golden doodle and Leroy's a labradoodle, or a border doodle, but Leroy's the big brother. And you could see, you know, Fergus will be doing something and Leroy looks at him and go like, you're not supposed to be doing that, and kind of steer him away from it. It just goes to show you how smart these animals really are.
Absolutely. I'll tell you one of the most, you've just reminded me, it was sad but so beautiful years ago when I had horses and I went out to the field with the horses and there was a few calves. And I noticed this calf seemed to be pushing another calf about. And I was like, well, that's not very kind. And anyway, so I sort of went up and actually the calf, it was being moved about, was blind, and it was trying to steer it under the fence and help it. I was absolutely gobsmacked and I thought, that is nature just at its best.
Now, one thing I may have to call you on is we have goats and they crawl up on top of my trucks and service trucks, and I'm gonna need to put a stop to that.
Oh, it's a goat, but I'll tell you one thing, I would just do it for fun. Animals also do things to wind their owners up. Some people say, oh, my dog, it keeps doing the same, keeps doing the same. So I ask the dog and all I get is the instinct back from the dog, or reply is the owner laughing. So what happens? The dog does it again and again and again until the point was actually, no, you need to change what you're thinking as well to the owner.
That's what I try to tell the kids. We try to keep the dogs from jumping up on the couch, but yet when they play around, they're running around, the kids jump on the couch, the dogs jump on the couch, everybody's laughing, and I'm like, we actually just told them to get off the couch. And now you guys are laughing, so they think it's fun and it's all good. Do you remember what Spider-Man told you?
No. I'll be totally honest, no.
I do. We had to change his feed up because he didn't like some of the food we were giving him, which he told you, I'm eating it because I'm hungry, but it's not making me feel good. So that was one of the big things, which, like I said, it helped out tremendously.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Another funny one I remember is another cowboy who you also know, and his horse was pausing because he was frightened that the calves were going to come into him. I can remember him giving me the feeling of like, whoa. So we set up something of like, if you went just a tad faster, you would be out of the way and you jump off, and it worked.
You know, one thing about professional rodeo industry, if your animal's not performing, you're not winning and you're not able to support your family. So obviously try to make sure everything's in line and meshing so you're able to, you know, achieve what you're out there trying to do, and for the safety and the health of the horse.
Absolutely. If you can appreciate that horses are very, they pick up on things. And a lot of you have injuries. So sometimes you'll find that a horse is actually trying to help you by protecting you, by maybe doing it what they think is a safer way. If you have an injury, you can sometimes sit imbalanced. That then will give information to a horse. And I've had that on just normal riding horses. They keep saying, why does it keep doing X, Y, Z? And then the horse says, well, you've got, say, a sore hip or an injury in your leg, you're riding slightly longer on the right, you put more pressure, you're sending the horse the wrong way. So it's all down to signals.
Jackie, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully we'll get some more cowboys using you, because I think it's just going to help elevate their performance, their horses' performance, and obviously elevate the sport.
Oh, I totally appreciate, you know, your ethos and your openness and stuff. And yes, let's have a chat to your ghost just for fun.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Well, I'd like to welcome my next guest. This young lady has overcome so much in her life and is an inspiration not only to me, but millions of people out there. Amberley Snyder, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm excited that I finally got to be on here.
You know, from the first time I met you, I was inspired by you. I believe it was at the American. That was the first time I got to meet you, but then just watching you, you know, through the years, not only competing, but telling your story and being a motivational speaker. You were injured in a vehicle accident and are paralyzed from the waist down, but to see how you've overcame everything, it should be a life lesson to so many people. I mean, you're doing what you want to do. You're running barrels, you're living your dream, and you don't let anything back you down.
I try not to. I feel like it's sometimes an uphill battle, but I still get to compete and at the level I want to. Of course, there's room for improvement. I mean, I'm the only one that does what I do, so I better be good at it, or gosh, I certainly wouldn't be able to place anywhere.
Amberley, your horses had such a huge impact on when you got injured to get back on them. Tell us about your horses and obviously the importance they were for you to get back in the saddle.
So the first horse I would tell you is Power, of course. That's the one that everybody knows. That's the horse that I think across the entire world, they know his name. I'm pretty sure there's a few people that if they could just meet Power, they honestly could care less to meet me. But I got him when I was in high school. He was a little bit of a problem child as far as it goes with his ADHD, but luckily the pattern's not any longer than what it is. He ended up being a really great horse, and of course he was the one that I got back on after my accident. You know, he's the horse that really gave me my freedom back, and honestly the opportunity to do at that point was impossible. You know, what I was asking to do, nobody had done before.
Right.
He was like kind of at the top of his game, I guess, in some ways for him, like that was where he was, and he didn't deserve to be outrun. So I let him retire and picked up the ones that I run now.
We actually were visiting with a pet psychic and talked about how much animals communicate with humans, and they don't, you know, we don't know that they're doing that. You know, they know, hey, there's something wrong here, we need to change this up. And do you feel like when you know, got healed up enough to ride, Power was that way? He's like, okay, I need to kind of take care of her here and there?
So of course I was different, right? I was in a chair, my horses had seen me walking, and I didn't know how they were all going to react. My road horse would snort at me. He was never like scared of me, but he would always snort at me, and Power would always give me this look like, what are you doing? Like, what? Get out of that. Like, just stand up and get out of that. Like, that's the feeling I would get. And then I started running him, and I was so mad because after my accident, he didn't run as hard as what he did prior. And so it would make me so mad because I'm like, horse, I don't think you understand. Like, no one's giving us a shortcut here. If we don't freaking show up, like, that's not it. And so I finally I called a pet psychic because I'm like, I've got to figure out what is going on with this horse. So she tunes into him, right? And the first thing he says is, did I hurt her? And the lady's like, no, you didn't hurt her. And he said, what horse out here hurt her?
Wow.
And she was like, nobody hurt her. And you know, She showed him that it was a truck, that I was in a truck accident, so that he understood that it wasn't any horse out there. And he was funny already because he was 100% a buddy horse. He liked every other horse around him until I would get on his back. And then it could be his best friend and he would bite them. He'd behave like that. And that truly made sense to me. So I told her to tell him, you need to go faster. Like, I know there's more in there, so you need to go faster. And he said, that's not my job. My job is to take care of her. From that moment on, I mean, how do you blame him for that?
Right. Obviously, you got him talked back into going faster, though.
Thank goodness he did. I tell you what, I've never had a horse be so careful with me when it comes to bad ground or bad scenarios as him. And I probably never will.
Changing gears from getting hurt to the American to your horses, now Yellowstone, you're a movie star. Tell me something about it, because I've watched one season, and to see how it's taken over the Western world and it's helped expand and broaden the Western way of life, it's pretty cool.
You know what, that part has been really neat with that show. The barrel racing wrap has been very interesting when it comes to Yellowstone. You wouldn't believe how many people have asked me at this point, because I was on the show, right? Like, are all the stories accurate with barrel racers? I'm like, no, that is not through and through the way that this works. But it was pretty dang neat. So I knew Jake Ream, so he provided the horses on the show. He was actually, Taylor Sheridan was a client of Jake Ream's, and that's how they got hooked up when the show came out with Taylor Sheridan. And Jake had told him about my story and had really just said if it ever fit in with the script, he should put it in. And fast forward to season 3, right? It fit. It was kind of interesting the way that it came about. Jake he'd sent me a warning. He just said, hey, I think that they've written you in the script, so just be aware. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But honestly, my schedule at that time in the fall was so crazy. I was going to be leaving the country for a month. I was going to Costa Rica for 2 weeks and then Colombia for 2 weeks for stem cell stuff. And so I was like, watch them get a hold of me and I'm not even in the freaking country.
Right.
And the way that it worked, I legit got an email from one of the producers and said, hey, we've written you in the script, so we really need you to show up. Okay, I'm like, well, what are the days we have as options? Because here's my schedule and I'm going to be in town, and they filmed in Utah for that scene. So I said, I'll be in Utah like these 3 days in the next month. And I'm a small fish, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Tell Kevin Costner, hey, Amberley Snyder can't show up to film her scene. We're going to need to move you around. It ended up working out. And honestly, my mom and my brother drove power onto the set, and I went straight from the airport to set. We filmed that day, and I went back to the airport the next morning.
Wow.
When I showed up on set and I looked at the script, and it originally wanted me to pull myself on. I knew it wasn't a one and done concept. And I said, how many times are you guys wanting me to do this? And they said, well, how many times do you think you can do it? I'm like, one time. How many times can you do a straight up deadlift from the ground up to a horse? And they were like, oh, I guess that's true. Probably not that many times. I'm like, no, one. My brother was there with me, so we ended up throwing him in the script, and he's the one that lifted me on all the times.
That's so cool. And you brought up filming your series. How long from start to finish and writing the story, and I mean from start to finish to do your Netflix series?
So it really was pretty fast. Somebody prior to the American, a production company prior to the American, had written the whole script, and then their contract had like fiddled out, right? It was done. And then I ran in the American, so another company came on, and I actually had said no both times. I didn't want the movie. I didn't want anything to do with the movie, but my parents said yes, so that's what we did. We rewrote the script with the American in it.
You spoke about going down to Costa Rica for stem cells, and is there some benefits to that in hopefully helping you get better?
I hope so. I want to go again. I was in Colombia for my stem cell, and they did it so they actually could inject straight into my spinal cord, and they won't do that in the US yet. So you would know, right? You have to go, sometimes you have to go to Mexico in order to get what you want done. And the first time I did it, it was terrible. I've never been in so much pain in my whole life. Thankfully, it went away about 2 weeks after I went home, and they don't know why. And I felt some changes in my body after it. So I went back a second time, and same thing, I felt some changes. But what I need to do and what I want to do, I want to get these rewalk legs and then go and apply my stem cells again, because the way that they work, right, is they go to the part of your body that is the most inflamed or requiring the most energy to heal. And so I want to utilize the stem cells with the therapy.
You used to talk about the rewalk legs, trying to train your, I guess, retrain your body to a certain extent to move those appendages that aren't wanting to move through nerve, sensors and stuff. That is tough in itself, is it not?
Yeah, I felt like in order for me to be ready to even try them, I had to put myself in a better physical condition than what I had been before, because I wasn't ready. My body was super tight and I felt like my core could be stronger. I felt like I wasn't in the best place. It's easy to happen when you're busy. It's easy to put your physical health on the side. I don't know if you can see behind me, like I have a standing frame right here. And when I'm home, I try to stand every day, but when I'm not home, then all of a sudden here I am, not in the optimum physical health that I should be able to be in. So I had to do that first. I went in by myself and I tried them, and I didn't think they would feel a whole lot different than like my standing frame or my leg braces or my track chair, like all those things that help me stand.
Right.
Oh, it was so different. I mean, I actually felt like I was walking because they move like that for you, right? Your legs don't move stiff like they bend at your knees, and they actually walk for you. Like, I was just overwhelmed with the concept of, I knew I had missed walking, but I didn't know I missed walking that much.
So Amberley, tell me about I Spot an Angel.
So that is a pretty dang neat thing that I was able to start with Montana Silversmiths just this last year. So when I was in junior high, my mom bought me a little cowboy angel that I put on the corner of my cowboy hat because she said, she wanted me to have a cowboy angel to protect me when I ran. And then fast forward, I don't know how many years, right? They stopped making them. Well, I met up with Judy with Montana Silversmiths. We have now remade them. So we have a cowboy angel. It's Amberley's cowboy angel that can go on your cowboy hat. It's a pin or wherever you want to pin it, as well as necklaces. So everyone can have their own cowboy angel that protects them when they're on a horse or off a horse, or in order just to have somebody looking out for you, because I'm sure every single person knows they have some cowboy angel or cowgirl angel up there that's watching out for them. And it's fun to be able to share it with kids.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to get me a couple of them. You're an inspiration to everybody out there. Trust me. I know you see it. I know you feel it. I know people tell you that, but it's emotional for me to see how much of an impact you have on everybody's life. So I'm proud of you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, have a safe trip. Thank you again for your time, Amberley.
Thank you. Luke, what would you be known for? The booty shake, the always wearing black, the rip lookalike. I mean, which one do you want to pick?